Let's add one more effect. We're going to add in a blur here. Type in blur, and it'll show you where it is. Now, with After Effects, there are 20, almost 30 blurs here. This is just with typing in the word blur. There's a lot more than what you see here. And they do some really crazy things. There's a lot of different things that you can have here. For example, the directional blur will blur your footage based upon a certain direction, any kind of direction, whether it's 30 degrees, whether it's 90 degrees, or 270 degrees. You can blur this in any direction. The lens blur is a very cool effect. It has a very peculiar blur to it. However, it does eat up a lot of RAM. So you want to use it as little as possible, or use it only for a specific reason. It does tend to take up a lot of RAM. The Gaussian blur is a very easy one to control, but this one that we're going to use is called the fast blur. And it's just really quick, a really simple blur that you can apply to basically anything. So we can close our exposure effect and open up our fast blur effect, and if you notice, our keyframes are grayed out. So this is great so that we can see where our previous effects occurred, so that we don't have to scrub through or kind of guess to where things are. So let's scrub to our first effect, and we'll turn on our stopwatch here. So let's scrub some more to where the effect occurred, go a little bit further, and let's blur this. Let's blow this maybe to be about 55 or so. Okay, let's just type that in. And you can blur by different dimensions here. We have the horizontal and the vertical here. You can do horizontal or just vertical. I'm going to pick just vertical so it has that really nice effect there. It kind of creates a different look to it. Very, very cool. Let's go back here, change it to a 0 again. We'll go to our next area, and I want to have a little bit of a preemptive blur, almost for some anticipation of that blur. So let's add a keyframe. We'll go further in time, and we'll blur it, say, about 25 there, not too much. Then we'll bring it down to 0 again. We'll scrub some more to where our effect occurs, add a keyframe, and we'll do maybe a 30 blur, and then we'll bring it back down, maybe a few frames past that. Okay? And I want to have just a little blur without the exposure there, just to kind of have a little bit of a weird blur going on. So let's do about 15, not too much. We'll go up to about 35, and we'll go down to 0 right after that. And you can just randomly place these blurs. It's not really important. This is just to kind of get you guys used to animating with blurs and using these different effects here. Okay? So have fun with it. Take your time. And I'm not going to add a blur to the very last part. I'll just have the exposure here for right now. And the last effect that I want to apply here is going to be called a glow. Let's type this in here. We'll go to glow. Now, one thing that After Effects does is that whenever you search for this different effect here, it'll tell you exactly where it is within the folder. So what you can do to kind of see what else you can find is let's delete the word glow, and we'll go to the stylized folder where it was located. And you'll see you have all these other effects here in addition to the glow. Now these other effects, there's a lot of different things that you can do. So the CC burn film creates a very unique transition. It kind of like burns the film. It almost like fades out. You can play with the coloring and everything. It's really, really innovative. There's the CC glass, which kind of adds this like bubble effect around all your different elements within your footage. It looks kind of cool. Play around with that one there. It's a pretty cool one. And the emboss one embosses the edges. The fine edges one can be cool to use. But there's a lot of really interesting effects here. But for this project here, we'll just go to the glow, and we'll drag this to your composition. Now I see that this is highlighting some of the green light here. It looks really, really neat. So let's close the fast blur, open up the glow, and there's a lot of effects here. And there's a lot of different elements here that you can play with. You can play with the radius, you can play with the intensity, you can change the color that this thing highlights, you can change what colors it does highlight, you can set different colors. There's a whole myriad of elements that you can change within this glow effect. The one that I want to focus on today is just the glow intensity. You can play around with these as you move forward with your project, but for right now, for the sake of time, we'll just stick to the glow intensity. So let's navigate to our first set of keyframes there. Turn on the stopwatch for the glow intensity and go forward. And we'll bring this up to maybe about a 2. Okay, we'll type in 2 right there. And we'll bring this back down to 0. Okay. Let's go some more in time, and we have a blur that's kind of happening right here. So let's start this glow right where that blur is going to start. We'll insert a keyframe here again, go forward in time, and we'll make this to be about a 1. Looks kind of cool there with that blur, doesn't it? We'll go forward, and we'll add a 0 right after here at the very end here. Okay? And add some more glows here as you go through. You can add your own effects to it. You can then import some different effects and see what else you can use here. But there's a lot of really cool effects that you can apply here. I'm just going over these 3 to show you what you can do with this. So whenever you do apply some more effects, you see what you can do. And at the end of this file here, let's add a keyframe here, and we'll have a transition. So it gets brighter, and it also has a glow. Do 1.5 for that. It kind of brightens the edges here, makes some of the tertiary shadows here kind of darker, almost this like blue color. So as you scroll back and forth, you can see how that's going to come up here forward and kind of almost get brighter. We'll add one more effect for this transition, but I want that to be something that you guys do. Okay? You can add your own effects to it. You can go through these effects and see what else you can add. But these 3 are what I'm going to cover today. And if you want to go through and add some more effects, go for it. I really encourage you to kind of navigate through the effects and just kind of play with each one and see what each one does individually. In addition, a lot of these effects work hand in hand. They work as in dual effects. So if you want to add the glow to maybe like a poster eye, see what kind of effects that'll do, or like the strobe light to the glow effect, or the strobe light to something else, to a color distortion. We'll go through effects a lot more within class, but for right now we'll focus on these. Just some very simple animation techniques with these glows. And let me add a keyframe back here. Put the 0 there. Okay, now we're good. Okay. And what you can do is kind of play with these effects and see what happens. Okay? The world is basically limited by your creativity. You have an unlimited amount of things that you can do here. I deeply implore you to kind of figure out what you can do with this program. One thing to keep in mind is to keep your transitions similar to your effects. If your transitions are very, very different, for example, if you have some glows, some blurs, and some light effects going throughout your video or your footage, and then you have this weird rotation effect at the end for your transition, it just doesn't fit. You set the stage for this to be like a rustic look, but you're going to end with this kind of cheesy rotation device. It doesn't work, and it makes you look like an amateur animator. So keep it similar to what you're using. That's the best way to keep things looking nice. Don't go too far and beyond so things look completely cheesy, but just keep it nice enough that you know what you're doing. And for the next part of this project, we'll be going over the text editor and how to animate in text. So the rest of this is going to be your own device here. What a great way to animate the effects is that once you apply them to one layer, you don't have to go and then reapply them to the second layer. Just click on your effect layer, press Control-C to copy that layer, and go to your second layer, go to your second footage layer, press Control-V. Let's open this up, and you can see that your effects have been applied. All you got to do is open these up and go to whichever layer is animated and move these to the corresponding area. You can move individual keyframes. You can do anything you want to. You can change the timing up to kind of make it make it more random. So play with your effects here and play with your timing. Timing is probably the most important thing here, to make sure your timing is perfect. Okay.